unmute my mic. Yes, okay. Let me pull up the chat again. Welcome everybody. 20 people already. Welcome to my stream. As you can always see, the other corner here, there's the time till liftoff from now, and today we have the Ariane 5 again. Welcome. We have two satellites, and this one is this Ariane 5 is really special because it has a small extender between underneath the fairing, because both the satellites were so big they needed to extend the fairing by 50 centimeters if I'm correct. Yeah, they had to extend the fairing by 50 centimeters because the combination of the two was so big. And I can actually do something really cool because I make models. This is the Ariane 5 model. It's made out of paper, for anyone who's wondering. And there goes my cable again. And yeah, so still, like, if this wants to stick, come on. Problems, issues, stream issues. Ha. I'll just leave it off. It doesn't want to stick on. Let me. Buonasera. So good evening, or maybe it's afternoon if you're on the other side of the pond. But yeah, the Ariane 5, two boosters of payload, and both satellites. So the upper passenger is the heaviest one. This one is 6,459 kilograms. Don't know that in pounds. I don't live I don't use pounds. So, and the lower one, which is the Indian GSAT-31, is 2,563, no, 36 kilograms. I get confused. So yeah, we have a mission time of 42 minutes and 27 seconds. If you're wondering where I'm pulling all these numbers from, if you go to Arianespace.com, you can pull it from the press kit, launch kit, whatever they call it. It has all the data. I love them. So today, the rocket, it's all about the rockets. The payloads are going to be above India and above Europe. The one is really large, really heavy. They needed to create more space, so they extended the fairing 50 centimeters. It's actually underneath the silda, so the carrying structure inside of the fairing. So if this just come on, go on there. You're basically just watching me fiddle around with this model. It just works, but then on stream it doesn't. Make the correct orientation. So on top of this is the fairing, and this is a old one from maybe 2 years old already. I don't know. And inside here are two payloads. So there is a black carrying structure on top of this. Then the satellite on top is called the upper passenger. Then the below the carrying structure, they call it the lower passenger. And I can pull up some images if this allows me to switch it. Switch. Whoa, magic. Chat room. Yes. So as you can see, this is the upper passenger and the lower passenger, and the second stage, first stage, two boosters, which contain over 200 tons of fuel. This contains about 170 tons of fuel. Sorry, I don't have the numbers in pounds. Sorry for the ones that are using pounds, but and both boosters, upon ignition, they burn 2 tons of propellant each second. So they combined they use 4,000 or 4 tons of fuel. And the core stage uses the Vulcan 2, which burns 300 kilograms per second. And then the second stage, I don't know, I don't have the numbers for it, but I don't know, it contains roughly 14 tons of fuel, 15 tons, and it burns it in about 15 minutes. So quick maths, I can't do quick maths at this moment. So yeah, as you can see, this is called the Silda, and so the upper passenger gets ejected first. They turn the stage the other way, then they eject the lower passenger, and this is really special about the Ariane 5 because it uses the dual launch system. And is it live already? Ha! I can show you. This is the configuration today, and as you can see, this line is the extension of the fairing. So they needed to create more space. As you can see, this one is really big. And yeah, information, and as you can see, the boosters will separate at 2 minutes and 24 seconds. So then the boosters will fall off and drop into the ocean. There they go. Then the stage continues flying, and after it has burned all of its fuel, it shuts down, separates, and then it's left to the second stage. And so what the second stage does after it has burned out, let me put up the firing again. Yeah, so what it does, it orients it one direction. Songs, bands. There's only one direction, and then it spins it up, ejects the satellite for stability. That's why it spins it up. Then it turns the other way, and then it ejects the Silda, so the black carrying structure, and then it turns another way, and then it ejects the lower passenger. And that's what this launch is about. And we're currently 21 minutes from liftoff. So I'll run down the launch sequence with you. So let me put up this again. Where is it? Oh, there it is. You're hiding from me, sneaky. Yeah. Still 4 minutes left till they start to do the testing. Oh wait, let me turn off the sound. The annoying beeps of Arianespace are always fun. Yeah, yeah. Sequence. There we go. So at 11 hours and 23 minutes, they started the countdown. So everyone that is involved in this launch took their position, and they started monitoring all the data coming in, and that's what it is. And then at 10 hours and something minutes, they started to check the electrical connections between the rocket and the pad, and the electrical connection between my headset and my and my charger fell out. So nice that it happens at the same time. And then at 4 hours they started fueling up. So it uses liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And does the Silda re-enter and burn up? By the way, no, not immediately, but it does eventually. The lowest point of the orbit is 250 kilometers, and so eventually drag will pull it down, and it will eventually burn up. But it takes a long time. It takes over 2 years for it to burn up. But the fuel gets the first stage and the second stage get fueled, and then at 3 hours and 18 minutes the chill down of the Vulcan engine starts. So what they do is I have another diagram of this actually. Let me pull this up. This is what the diagram of the Falcon looks like. So what they do is from the both fuel tanks, so the both tanks actually, the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tank, they open the valves for the turbopumps, so to the turbopumps, so the turbopumps can cool down and get at the correct temperature. Because if they don't, and they would flush it with fuel the second it would ignite, sometimes you get the both are cryogenic, meaning that they're really cold, and the turbopumps are just at the ambient temperature, which should be around 20-30 degrees, somewhere in between. But that means that as soon as the cold fuel hits the warm turbopumps, the turbopumps get a thermal shock, which could break them, and on the other hand, the fuel and or oxidizer immediately turns into vapor, and vapor in a pump that is designed to use to run liquids isn't really a good thing, and it could break it too. So that's why they cool it, and probably part of the they also cool part of the chamber, so it let it cool down. But the one thing I still couldn't find out is that this engine, this is the Falcon 2, part of the hydrogen gets used to cool the walls of the chamber of the burning engine, but it also, part of it combines with the turbopump exhaust, and it cools a sort of film of relatively cool gas is formed between the wall of the nozzle and the really hot combustion products. But I couldn't find out if they actually allow the hydrogen to run into the pipes of the cooling system of the engine. I couldn't figure out if they did that or don't, but I need to do some more research on that, and I will let you know in the next episode of Rocket Talk, which is coming. This is a gas generator engine. It is using two different turbopumps, but it's a gas generator engine, and it's open cycle because they don't use the exhausts of the pre-burner again in the combustion chamber. And what else? I was thinking of something else, but I forgot. 15 minutes. Let's see what Arianespace is up to. Oh yeah, I know. So on the launch pad, you will see two yellow arms sticking out and connecting to the second stage. And we'll run down to T-7 minutes. Under T-7 minutes is the terminal count, which means that the computer tracks everything, and all the things that need to happen to ready the launcher for launch is happening within those 7 minutes. I know fuel has been put in, but those 7 minutes is really what are the critical steps to launch. If something would happen within in these 7 minutes, they move it back to the T-7 minutes, and start again if possible. At T-7 seconds, around that mark, they these yellow arms that deliver the cryogenic fuels to the second stage, they detach and they retract. If something would happen under those 7 seconds and it would abort the launch, they immediately have a 24-hour recycle because they need to connect those arms again. And then we get to T-0 seconds, everything checks out. The engine ignites. If something would happen within those within the ignition sequence of the launch, so the engine uses 3 solid igniters to ignite the launcher, ignite the engine. One of them uses, so one of them is connected to this system, and it spins up the turbopumps. Then there is another that ignites the gas generator, and then there's another one that ignites the combustion chamber. And those 3 igniters, once they have been used, you can't reuse them. So if something happens under the between t-0 and 7 seconds, so 7 seconds is when they normally ignite the boosters and lift off, something happens, it takes 2 or 3 days to replace those igniters, because they need to replace those igniters. And I can tell you, one of those igniters is, from the top of my head, around 30,000 euros. So it's really expensive to have an abort on this mission. So for, let's say, a Falcon 9, you can just reschedule and refire the engine. But for this, they need to reconnect everything before they can go again. And we're under 12 minutes. Let's see what Arianespace is doing. Okay, I'm just gonna switch over to Arianespace now. I hope there's audio. I had some problems.
Equipment bay where the computers are. We'll be describing each in turn as it is functioning. The 2 satellites there, the heaviest, usually separated first. That is the case tonight. Tonight it's HS4 SGS-1, or to use its longer name, Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1, Helisat 4. You'll hear both used tonight. In the upper berth, 6.5 tons. The lower deck, GSAT-31, due to be separated at plus 42 minutes. With us tonight, as usual, is Arianespace's Chief Executive.
So you see,
Stefan Israel.
Oh.
We have time for a few questions. Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening.
Good to see you. Won't keep you too long, just a few questions. The first question, it's the first launch of the year. What makes it special?
Perfect timing,
so the year really begins tonight with the first launch of Ariane 5. We will make 5 Ariane 5 this year, and tonight we will deliver for 2 key customers for Arianespace. In upper position, we will deliver for Arabsat. This is the 11th launch we do for Arabsat, with 2 end operators, which are CAXT in Saudi Arabia and Elasat in Greece and Cyprus. And in the lower position, we will deliver for the Indian Space Agency. It is ISRO, and it is the 23rd satellite we are going to orbit for ISRO. So tonight, we have 2 good partners and friends on board on Ariane 5.
And 2 old friends.
Yes.
Yes. Now, can you describe the mission for us, maybe give people some facts and figures that we can remember?
Yes, so we have transferred the launcher on the launch pad yesterday. During all day, we have made the final operation. We have filled the main stage, the upper stage. We have checked that all systems were green. And
why
in a few minutes at 6:01,
didn't
we are
ISRO
going to
launch
lift off.
GSAT
That the lift-off occurs 7 seconds after the initiation of the Vulcan. The mission is going to last 42 minutes. We will first separate on the upper position SGS-1 and Elasat 4 after 27 minutes, and then after 42 minutes we will separate GSAT-31.
31, right. You mentioned that we have double launches tonight. Is it fair to say that the double launch has become the Ariane 5 trademark?
We can say that this is absolutely the art of Ariane 5 mission. We have delivered many other missions. We have delivered Bepi Colombo. We have delivered Galileo last year. But it is true that year after year, we have delivered a lot of dual launch, and we have this specificity. In one launch, we make 2 missions, which is quite interesting for the customers.
Okay, last question, if you don't mind. We're coming off a big year. What do you see for this year?
So this year, you know that we target up to 12 launches from the CSG with our current family of launchers. Among them, 5 Ariane 5s, and we will have some Soyuz and some Vega. So it will be absolutely a big year also from CSG this year.
Super. Stefan Israel, many thanks. Very clear as always. Stefan is going to take his place in what we call the fishbowl behind us, and he'll be back, of course, at the end of the mission. We are going to stay in Jupiter and present some of the key players who make the mission happen, the dramatis personae, if you will. We're looking at the Arianespace High Command, led by Stefan, who will make his way there momentarily. With him, Roland Lagier, who is the Chief Technical Officer. Now, these gentlemen will make any decisions should anything unexpected come up during the countdown or during the mission. You may see them on the phones with their teams here at the base or back in Europe. Coming up now, a brief presentation of the mission, some things to look out for. You know that the main stage and the boosters are ignited at ignition. The boosters will burn for about 2 minutes, and they are discarded when they have used up all their fuel. The main stage, of course, continues burning. Less than a minute later, the fairing is released. Our altitude now 100 kilometers up. 6.5 minutes later, the main stage engine will shut down, and it is cast off in its turn. The upper stage engine then ignites, and it will provide the remaining thrust to complete the mission. Our upper passenger, HS4 SGS-1, will be released at plus 27 minutes. It's held in place by a structure called the Silda, which we no longer need, so we can discard that now. And finally, our second spacecraft, GSAT-31, separated at plus 42 minutes, and Ariane's mission is complete.
Ooh.
8.5 minutes to go to the first Ariane launch of
It's
the year.
raining?
Outside the launcher is waiting, and the
Or is
weather,
it the
as you can
water?
see, we had rain last week. The last 3 days have been very sunny and warm until today. This afternoon, we got rain and clouds, so
Yeah.
we don't know what the visibility is going to be like. DDFR said we're going to launch, and we're sure we are going to launch, but visibility, we'll have to wait and see. We'll
Yeah.
hope for the best. Ariane can launch in the rain, poses no problem to lift off.
Take that, American launchers. We can launch in the rain. Sorry.
It's a very complicated set of procedures, especially here in Jupiter, where there's a constant flow of information coming in to the people behind us here in the fishbowl from all around the base. Two other people that you're going to be seeing tonight, and especially hearing from as we move back into Jupiter. You will see from Arianespace Didier Said, who is the mission director, and he works alongside the DDO, also called the Range Operations Manager, a CNES person. Myrto Madlon tonight in the role. You'll be hearing him a lot because the DDO calls out all the key milestones during the countdown and during the flight.
DDO, attention pour la séquence finale lanceur.
And he's going to call out the 7-minute mark.
Top, H0 moins 7 minutes.
All right, 7 minutes. Why is that important? It brings us into what's called the automatic or the synchronized sequence, which are the final moments of the final countdown, the tip of the iceberg, if you like. What's happening, basically, power's passing from the ground, which controls everything now, to the onboard computers on the launcher, making her autonomous. All right, you know everything. Our stage is set. We're go for launch. I'm going to make my way up to the broadcast booth, and while I'm doing that, take a look at a film on the launcher campaign to see how Ariane is put together.
There were some rainy launches before. Especially the Ariane 5.
Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1 HeLSat-4 was flown to French Guiana on an Antonov aircraft, arriving at Cayenne's Félix Éboué Airport. It was then transported by road from Cayenne to the European spaceport in Kourou.
How is the audio, by the way?
Was
Tell me if I need to
in the
turn up
S5C
anything.
South facility in order to begin the preparation phase. The satellite was then transferred to fueling building S5B, where the Lockheed Martin team filled its tanks. The GSAT-31 satellite was also flown to French Guiana on an Antonov aircraft, arriving at Cayenne's Félix Éboué Airport. It was then transported to the spaceport along with all allied equipment and placed in the S5C North facility for preparation. The satellite was then transferred to fueling building S5A, where the ISRO team filled its tanks. Combined operations involving
They look like
Geostationary
astronauts
Satellite
in
1
those
HeLSat
suits.
4, and the launch vehicle began at D-11 in the S5B building with integration of the satellite on its flight data.
After assembly of the launch vehicle and checks on the electrical and propulsion systems, it was placed in secure standby on December 17th, then transferred to the final assembly building on January 17th. Combined satellite launch vehicle operations were initiated on January 21st. The satellites were assembled on the launch vehicle and all launch vehicle systems placed in flight configuration.
The satellite was then transferred to the final assembly building to be integrated on the cylinder structure, placed under the fairing and integrated the launch vehicle with the upper composite. Combined operations for GSAT-31 and the launcher started at D-8 in the S5A facility with integration at its flight adapter. The satellite was then transferred to the final assembly building to be directly mated onto the launch vehicle.
I'll get back to that
with
soon,
the upper composite at
if I get time.
Since D-6, the two payloads have been subjected to health checks and battery charging. Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1, Sat-4 and GSAT-31 are now both on top of the launch vehicle and standing by for the final countdown.
I would like to thank the launch team for its hard work and commitment.
All right, Joshua Jampel back up here in the broadcast booth for the first launch of the year for Arianespace, the first Ariane 5 and the first two satellites of the year. There are some 1,700 people working around the space base in all, and our cameras are here in Jupiter, but many others are hard at work at many other sites across the range.
So,
I want to bring you some of those. The range
behind
of
the rocket
is large, about the size of Singapore or about the size of the island of Martinique. We're going to show you in just a moment one of those places where there's a lot of work being done now. It's up in the launch zone where the launch management teams are working under the direction of the Launch Complex Operations Manager. Today, Patrick Lucette in the role. Now, most of their work was done earlier in the day. By the time we get to the automatic sequence here, the 7-minute mark, they, like most of us, like the launch
Space
vehicle
Twitter has gotten
itself,
very
are
silent. Yeah.
waiting mainly. The work done up there carried out by two teams, one responsible for executing flight chronology, and the other for verification of the flight worthiness of the Ariane 5 vehicle. Now, the Launch Complex Operations Manager heads up the group responsible for execution of the chronology. Now, he coordinates with Mission Control back here for final authorization to launch, and when all the conditions are right, he then okays the automatic sequence at the 7-minute mark, which we saw.
So the big sort of trumpets on the side,
they are closer to the launch pad than we are. Here in Jupiter, we're about 15 kilometers away, but they are right there.
What they are the flame ducts.
Countdown is a complicated process and a long one.
They're all watching,
Final
Simon.
countdown actually began around 6 this morning with first checks of the electrical services and the inertial platform. Filling of the lower stage began at 1 o'clock. Filling the upper stage began about 3 hours ago.
So you see it on
this
the
split-screen image shows the propellant feeder arms in the middle of the launcher. We're going to pull back and you get a better view in just a second. Liquid hydrogen on the right. On the left, liquid oxygen on the right. They're putting propellant into the upper stage tanks. Now, these arms pull back at -7 seconds before ignition. You see them in the middle of the screen, the yellow bars running from the gantry into the upper stage. One of the last things you'll see before liftoff, so we want to take a minute and mention it. Minute and a half to go.
I hope they're all watching.
The electrical power supply has been switched from the ground to on board, and here in Jupiter, the VIPs and the invited guests have begun to make their ways outside to watch the liftoff. There are 2 terraces, as you may know, on either side.
That is
of the
right,
building
Space TV. That's I totally agree.
The DDO
Enjoy the launch, guys.
The 1-minute mark.
Top à 0-1 minute.
Pay attention to those arms.
Final 60 seconds.
Retracting and then the ignition. And then
we
have to wait 7 seconds, so don't be afraid if nothing happens.
And at Helisat and at Arabsat, to Lockheed Martin in the US, locally to the Kourou, Sinnamary, and Cayenne sites, to our industrial partners ESA and CNES, and to all of you following the broadcast on the internet. We hope you are enjoying it. If you're not settled in, pull up a chair and you can enjoy all the action. And that's about to begin. We're going to cut away, let you listen to the DDO for the final countdown.
So indeed, it takes 7 seconds before it launches. So it hits 0 and then counts up to 7 and then it ignites the boosters.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
Ignition. go.
Allumage vulcain.
Boosters, yeah, there we go. Woo!
Allumage
Ignition,
de
liftoff.
décollage Ariane VR247.
The rocket actually has a thrust to weight ratio of around 2. So, although it is relatively slow compared to the Vega, it is still quite fast.
La propulsion est nominale.
Lifting off from the ground here in French Guiana with a lot of
It's
fire,
faster than
carrying
the
2 new satellites.
Falcon
We
and
lost her into the clouds. We didn't have much visibility, but we did have liftoff. The 2 boosters now providing 90% of our thrust, propelling the launcher along her
La trajectoire
trajectory
nominale.
at an ever higher velocity, as the DDO says all is working perfectly on board. Our mass at liftoff, 775 tons. And to get that sort of weight off the ground, you need a lot of push, and push we have. She's burning 5 tons of fuel every second. That's 2.5
yeah, it's really
tons
cloudy
per
there.
second burning in each booster. Plus the core stage burning another 300 kilos of fuel, again, every second.
So the thrust to weight
Ariane 5
ratio,
is now following the program in the onboard computer, which gives all the orders, including stage separations, which we will soon see in less than a
Tous les
minute.
paramètres à bord sont nominaux, la propulsion est nominale.
so
The
the
DDO says all is working fine on board. We're in the first of 4 flight phases. We'll describe each in turn and in detail so you can follow Ariane as she heads east across the Atlantic. Right now, the first
La
flight phase,
trajectoire est nominale.
the
Like
single first stage engine,
30
and the 2
seconds
boosters are
left
burning.
in boosters.
The boosters will each consume their 240 tons in just over 2 minutes. In about 20 seconds, they will be extinguished, and they're the first to be jettisoned, and you'll hear that
At
from
the-
the video, and you'll see that, of course, on the animation as well.
Right top
This
of your
first
screen, you
flight
see a
phase
circle
using
and
both
a
cryogenic,
cross.
cold
The
fuel,
cross
and
is what
storable.
the rocket is actually
Propulsion
doing,
nominale
and
offers
the
certain
advantages over
circle
storable,
is what
better and more
the
precise performance, and
predicted
its motors can be reignited. There we have
place
right
along
on
that
time.
path is.
Separation of the 2 boosters.
Séparation des 2 EAP.
The DDO confirms it. They fall 500 kilometers from shore into a protected area.
And they go,
to get an
and
idea
there
what
we
it
go,
looks
twisting
like
and
from the
turning
onboard
again.
Camera. There is a second booster to the port side of the ship, which is out of camera range. French Guiana was in part chosen
So,
as a
why
base
you see
for its
the
opening on the water, launches posing no threat to the local population.
you see
We'll have more on
the
that coming up.
Ariane 5 actually using it doing
now,
this, so
On the bottom of your screen, take a look on the left, our altitude approaching 100 kilometers. And on the right, our speed. We've passed 2 kilometers per
I'm 30
second.
seconds ahead here. Yeah.
The speed we need for satellite
Stop spoiling it,
separation
okay?
is roughly 9 kilometers per
No.
second, so keep your eyes on the
La
numbers.
propulsion est nominale.
Separating the
And when we're
ferry.
near the region of 9 kilometers per second, we're getting
Bye-bye.
satellite separation.
Séparation
Fairing
quad.
separation has come right on time. Separation given by 2 pyrotechnic systems, one horizontal and one vertical. They're cords that actually remove the fairing by a small contained explosion, and we emphasize contained, of course.
So it
We
was
can separate the fairing now because we are out of the dense layers of the atmosphere.
Please.
100 kilometers up.
Stop talking.
There's neither friction
wanna
nor
talk
heating,
too.
which could disturb the passengers. Also, we can discard any dead weight when possible to maximize the launcher's performance. The fairing weighs 2.5 tons, so it's good to get rid of it when we can. Ariane 5 is the heavy lift launcher. The 2 other
Yeah.
members of the family,
Tous les
Soyuz,
paramètres à bord sont nominaux.
lifting middle-sized payloads, 2 and 3 tons, and Vega, the light lift vehicle for missions of 1 ton roughly. With its family of launch vehicles, Arianespace is the reference, providing launches of any mass to any orbit at any time.
So
And Arianespace is part of Europe's space effort, which is a 3-way affair among ESA, CNES, and Arianespace, and you find them all here along with the customers.
one fun
Arianespace
thing
is in
is
charge of operating the family of launchers and of marketing launch services and the Ariane program. ESA, in a nutshell, funding new programs, and the CNES overseeing coordination of all
La
space-based
propulsion est
operations.
nominale, le pilotage reste calme.
we
Vienna Space Center, the
get
world's
a
only dedicated commercial space base.
worse
Where
CGI
Arianespace
image
operating
than they
the
get
launcher
into
family
in the
Ariane
control
5,
room.
soon to be Ariane 6, Soyuz and Vega, soon to be the updated Vega C.
Yeah.
Arianespace also managing the launcher and the satellite campaigns. We have the first of many films coming up for you now. We'll have films on both customers later on. For now, on the community of Ariane cities, highlighting towns that are...
Yeah, he loves the... I'll probably need to save everything for after the launch. I will write it down somewhere. I don't forget.
En 2019 se cumplen 500 años de la primera expedición de la Vuelta al Mundo que partió de Sevilla. Esa Vuelta al Mundo de Magallanes y Elcano. Entonces Sevilla era la capital económica del mundo. El próximo año, 2019, a la presidencia de la Comunidad de Ciudades Ariane la ostentará la ciudad de Sevilla. Es una enorme oportunidad y también un orgullo el centrar el interés de todo el sector aeroespacial en nuestra ciudad. Desde 2012 pertenecemos a la Comunidad de Ciudades Ariane y en ella hemos trabajado con otras ciudades para intentar que la inversión pública y privada haga del sector aeroespacial uno de nuestros motores de la economía. Para nosotros la oportunidad de esta presidencia de la Comunidad de Ciudades Ariane tiene también su broche de oro con la celebración de un Consejo de Ministros de la Agencia Espacial Europea en nuestra ciudad, en donde además se van a discutir importantes inversiones para los próximos años en este sector. Estoy convencido de que los debates que se produzcan, las reflexiones sobre la financiación y los modelos de inversión para estos proyectos van a hacer de Sevilla, sin duda, el centro de la atención mundial en la industria aeroespacial.
If you followed our launch last December, where we had, as a matter of fact, another GSAT, we also had a delegation from the community of Ariane cities from Les Mureaux, French town. Tonight, Sevilla, in English Seville, of course. CVA is a non-profit outfit aiming to strengthen cooperation among cities and organizations involved in Europe's space programs. We, meanwhile, are in the second powered flight phase, the single-engine core stage burning now. The boosters have done their job. Another minute to go before it shuts down. During the film on...
so you see it's leveling out now.
Downrange tracking station. We're going to go to a launch replay, the first of what we hope are many. You can relive those very exciting moments 8 minutes ago. We have cameras at several of the observation sites here across the base, and throughout the broadcast and at the end we will be bringing you replays like this one is another one from closer viewpoint. The Natal station, the
there it goes.
Downrange tracking station,
Shut down.
Run by Brazil's Defense Department. It sees the lower stage burnout and separation. All of Ariane's trajectory has been designed to be followed from the ground, of course. We're waiting for confirmation of the shutdown
Allumage de l'ESCA.
of the lower stage and its separation. There you can see falling back into the Atlantic and the ignition of the upper stage. There's 3 commands given by the onboard computer in about 13 seconds.
Let me check.
The lower stage falls back into the Atlantic off the Gulf of
I
Guinea.
thought it was supposed to be
Which
separating
brings us
at
into the third and final
around 9
powered
minutes.
flight phase, the single upper stage engine that'll burning until
Oh, we'll
perhaps
see.
25 minutes, another 16 minutes roughly. And what is the job of the upper stage, you may be asking? That is a good question. The upper stage takes the satellites to their injection point.
Look, by the way, in the
positions
control
them for
room they have
separation,
better
and then
graphics than we.
That's its propulsion role. But she also has a second role, which comes during the ballistics phase, is what they call the non-powered flight phase. And we'll have more on that coming up. For now, turning to our passengers, a film, our first look at HELSAT 4 SGS-1.
Regarding in particular Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1 and GSAT-4, Arianespace is proud for having been selected by Arabsat in 2015 to launch this satellite, which has been manufactured by Lockheed Martin based on modernized, well-known A2100 bus. The satellite will be located at 39° east orbital location. It will provide K-band spot beams communication services for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and will offer advanced K-band beam communication services for Helasat, the Arabsat subsidiary. I would like to thank all the teams that have been involved in this program. First, of course, our customer Arabsat, who always relied on Arianespace with a dedicated, very efficient teamwork all along the program. Secondly, CAXT and Helasat teams, who were always proactive and helpful during this smooth campaign and also in resolving issues when needed. And finally, Lockheed Martin, who always contributed with very constructive approaches and experienced, dedicated team.
Arianespace has been serving the Mideast since 1985, when it launched Arabsat 1A, the region's very first satellite. Arianespace also orbited the first satellites for Egypt, 1998, Libya, 2007, the United Arab Emirates in 2011, and Qatar in 2013. HS4 SGS-1 is the 11th Arabsat launched by Arianespace and the 22nd to be orbited for the Mideast. Another look now for more on the satellite.
Our power to communicate is the very basis, the essence of human civilization. Satellites unlock the ability to reliably connect from across the most remote places, transforming our understanding of the world and the way we live, work, and cooperate on a global scale.
From the ancient times, Greece and Cyprus were the bridge of civilizations and the crossroads of trade between Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Our ambition is Helasat to play this role, to be the window and the step of Middle East and Africa to Europe.
Helasat-4 is a powerful addition to our network and a major milestone to our business plan. It brings new capacity that will enable our existing and new customers to unlock growth opportunities in broadcasting, mobility, and private data networks.
HelasSat-4 will be placed in our orbital slot at 39 degrees east. The goal is to complement the extensive coverage of HelasSat-3, our latest satellite, which was launched 19 months ago, and provide in-orbit backup solutions to our customers. Our vision is to offer high-quality, cost-effective satellite service that will enable our customers to grow their business in the most remote areas.
Helasat-4 is the largest commercial satellite that Lockheed Martin built to date. It has electric propulsion with high-performance electric propellers and powered by the noble gas engine. It features 20 kilowatt sun burners and a weight mass of more than 6 tons, achieving a lifetime of more than 23 years.
HelasSat-4 will be launched by Ariane 5 in VA-247 Arianespace mission, keeping the great experience the company had from the launch of HelasSat-3 back in 2017. The satellite covers Europe, Middle East, and South Africa with KU and KA payload. In Europe, the satellite will expand HelasSat capability with 22 additional KU, FSS, and BSS transponders. In Middle East will provide 6 additional transponders, which can be used to provide 100% redundancy to HelasSat-3 in the area. In South Africa, it will expand HelasSat capability with 6 additional transponders, addressing the need of satellite capacity in the area. The satellite will be monitored and controlled by a team of expert fully certified engineers through HelasSat hot redundant facilities in Greece and Cyprus. A properly designed, built, and launched segment requires a respectively advanced level of flight operations so as to achieve the maximum of the satellite lifetime and the best of the service provisioning to the satellite customers. Offering premium satellite services since 2001, HelasSat premiered with HelasSat-2, positioned in 39 degrees east orbital position. After the successful launch of HelasSat-3 in 2017, HelasSat is now ready to welcome HelasSat-4, the new addition to our fleet, offering unprecedented capacity to our already extensive network.
Someone on Twitter said hell yes, Sat. So
are we.
I thought it was funny.
While you were watching the film, we were picked up by our next downrange tracking station, Ascension Island, tiny island in the South Atlantic. 11 minutes to go in the upper stage burn. Arabsat, the direct client for both satellites, founded in 1976, headquartered in Riyadh. 2 satellite control centers, one in Riyadh, one in Tunis, serving more than 80 countries across the Mideast, Africa, and Europe. Another look now at our first passenger with more on Caxt.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
It needs to go about a kilometer faster, so around, yeah, it's 10 minutes.
Investing in the technology of the future, which led to the creation of the Advanced Research Program. The program consists of several joint centers of excellence with prestigious U.S. academic and industrial entities, including MIT, Stanford, Caltech, University of California, Berkeley, and Boeing. Each center has been created to cover a strategic domain of interest that is vital to the development and prosperity of the kingdom, such as the energy, water, mobility, and health domains. Energy has always been critical to Saudi Arabia. Roaring growth in domestic oil consumption imposes challenges in finding other means of producing efficient energy. Saudi Arabia is the largest country in the world with no natural bodies of water. It is now beginning to feel the impact of rapidly rising water demand, which requires innovating in new water technologies. The kingdom has capitalized on its massive fossil fuel resources by successfully building a petrochemical powerhouse that is recognized worldwide. With this edge, it is crucial to keep up with the evolution in this field by innovating in advanced material and manufacturing. Rapidly evolving technologies, along with demographic and economic changes, are expected to alter the healthcare system worldwide. This demands an extensive effort to advance health technologies. The population of Saudi Arabia is growing rapidly. Major Saudi cities face increasingly severe traffic congestion and accidents and deteriorating air quality. Developing new smart mobility solutions in the kingdom is crucial to reduce these effects. Space applications are fundamental tools for bringing sustainable development throughout the world. Saudi Arabia is investing in space
Everything is still normal, yay.
To strengthen its position in telecommunications, disaster management, agriculture, environmental protection, and natural resource management. Saudi Arabia is taking the challenge of finding innovative methods to produce fresh food to its citizens in a place that has scarce freshwater resources. Information and communication technology is the new source of economic growth and development around the world. Nowadays, ICT is almost an essential enabler of all other domains.
That is true, Simon.
Every human-made system begins and ends with the environment. The harsh desert environment of Saudi Arabia demands that engineered systems be especially resilient to survive such conditions.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
Everything is still normal,
Ariane
yay.
5 continues to function flawlessly. Arianespace coming off a very good year in 2018. We spoke briefly with Stefan Israel about it. 11 launches we launched in every month except in February and May, but we launched twice in November and twice in December. 11 launches, 4 double launches, telecom satellites, navigation, space science, Earth observation.
And a failure.
Satellites went to geostationary transfer orbit and sun synchronous orbit. When I said Arianespace flies to all orbits, I meant it. Next up, a second film on our second passenger, this time on the prime contractor Lockheed Martin.
Arianespace, all orbits, also wrong orbits.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont nominaux, le pilotage est calme, la trajectoire est nominale.
I really like these clips of the assembly of the satellite. I think it's really interesting how they do and how they do it and what exactly they do. There's no one talking. I can talk. Okay, so what I wanted to explain is that you had the Ariane 5. After booster separation, you see the Ariane doing this, and then it flattens out again, and then it separates, and it goes down initially. While coding for the next episode of Rocket Talk, I discovered that the Ariane 5 actually aims for a apoapsis at first of around 180 kilometers, and then the boosters, because they have a lot of oomph, they boost it out of the atmosphere really quickly. So what it, but also the Ariane 5 needs to pitch down really quickly, and at the end of the burning of the boosters, it is almost horizontal. Then they separate, but then instead of having
HS4 or SGS-1 is the 46th Lockheed Martin satellite to be launched by Arianespace. There's another one in the backlog due for launch later this year. Our last launch for Lockheed Martin goes back to 2012, Flight 206, with the GSAT-31 and Venusat for Vietnam, both satellites built by the companies. We had a Lockheed charter. Some more numbers for you. This launches the 306th mission performed by the Ariane family and the 103rd on an Ariane 5. Up next, a look at the relationship between Hellasat SGS and Arianespace.
So what it does is, because the drop in acceleration, it has to pitch up.
Of the year with on board 2 passengers. Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1 Hellasat 4 as upper passenger, a Condosat for CACS and Hellasat operators, along with GSAT-31 as lower passenger for ISRO.
The Saudi Geostationary Satellite, SGS-1, is the national satellite, provides secure satellite communication on the Ka band for the government of Saudi Arabia. It provides 35 gigabit per second. It has the coverage of the Middle East, Europe, North Africa, and as well as a Ku band payload for the Hellasat subsidiary of Arabsat. SGS-1 is a satellite that comes out of the alliance of the agreement between CACS
3 minutes.
Who jointly contracted Lockheed Martin to build 2 geostationary satellites.
Extinction.
CACS is honored that it can provide the satellite in the name of Saudi Arabia thanks to the support of the custodian Tuliham Mosque and King Salman and the overseeing of the Crown Prince, who made the visit and monitored their manufacturing activities and wrote a precious word above the highest cloud, a sign of a new era of a new Saudi satellite on the geostationary orbit at 36,000 kilometers that comes after 15 Saudi-made satellites previously launched by CACS on the lower Earth orbit. I would like to thank His Highness Dr. Turki Al Saud, former president of CACS, and Chairman and President of CACS, Mr. Khalid Al-Faleh.
That's soon that they end the coverage.
Over Europe, Middle East and South Africa. It will provide extensive redundancy and backup capacities to further secure DTH networks and customer base and provide competitive advantage to its customers in Europe and other areas. We envision Hellasat 4 to provide additional capacities for HD, 4K and free-to-air channels, which will guarantee additional room for our existing and new customers to grow. Following the transfer orbit injection of the satellite, the Lockheed Martin Control Center in Colorado will begin the orbit raising operations with the support of Arabsat, CACS, and Hellasat engineering teams to bring the satellite into the geostationary position of 39 degrees east. With the completion of the in-orbit raising operations and the in-orbit test, the Hellasat STC will assume the on-station operations and they will operate the spacecraft for the upcoming 23 years of orbital maneuver life.
We had a very accommodating and smooth launch campaign thanks to a team from CACS, Technia, Arabsat and Lockheed Martin.
It has been a prosperous journey, and I would like to thank the Lockheed Martin team, the Ariane team, the Arabsat and CACS Technia teams for their support and excellent collaboration. I would like to thank my team, the Hellasat team, for the excellent job they did.
We are grateful for the cooperation and the service provided by Arianespace.
I wish a long life to Saudi Geostationary Satellite 1 Hellasat 4.
During the film, we were picked up by our last downrange tracking station. It's in Malindi in Kenya, and it will see the upper stage burnout and satellite separations. We are coming up on extinction of the upper stage engine. In just a few seconds, you will hear the DDO confirm that.
Extinction de l'étage supérieur cryotechnique.
DDO has confirmed it. You'll see the nozzle shutting down on the animation. And we are into the final flight phase, non-powered. We are coasting. However, we have not reached our maximum speed. You can see we're approaching 9.3 kilometers per second. Ariane's maximum speed will be 9.7 kilometers per second. After that, you'll begin to see her slow down. When she separates the first passenger in just about 2 minutes, her speed will be down to 9.4 kilometers per second, roughly. When she releases the Silda, that's the carrying structure for the second passenger, at plus 29 minutes, she'll be flying at 8.7 kilometers per second. And finally, when she separates GSAT-31,
what he says is not true.
Her speed will be
the rocket is already going slower. Didn't even hit
the power shut down. Not only do you
kilometers
see our speed start to drop, but we are moving into a new coasting phase. It's the last flight phase, the only one not powered, as we mentioned. Just a minute to go until separation of our first passenger. The time we have is plus 27:14, just in about a minute. And it's always a moan of high concentration when you're approaching satellite separation. The teams have gone through these procedures before, but it of course calls for tremendous focus. You don't want to say tense, but I think focused, concentrated. Gives you an idea of the atmosphere here in Jupiter. You see it on the faces. All eyes on the computer
So right now,
screens.
the stage is pointing sideways, so it's going this way, but it's pointing sideways.
Of our separation of our first passenger.
Then it separates, turns about 45 degrees, separates the Silda,
and you will hear the DDO
twists or turns another 45 degrees. Poof, separation. Separation.
You see our first passenger pushed away from the mothership by a series of springs. First good news of the evening, successful separation of our first passenger at over 1,000 kilometers.
Oh, I have to wait for 20 more minutes.
Peninsula. You will also notice that people here in Jupiter politely holding their applause because the mission
no applause
isn't
yet,
over.
so
we still have to separate our final passenger, GSAT-31. And we are in our ballistics phase, the final phase of the mission. When choosing a space base, the Europeans wanted nearby hills where radar and telemetry reception could be installed. You're looking at this place called the CVI, the Quick Look Telemetry Display Control Center. It's on a hill just behind us in Jupiter, and it's
Good evening,
place
Poland.
with the launch zone we saw at the top of the broadcast.
Whoa!
That is
1
very,
terabyte
very
per
busy.
second?
These teams
That is
have all the means for
crazy quick.
receiving, processing, storing, and analyzing all
What?
the data coming in from the ground stations along
That's
the
really
Ariane's
quick.
flight path. Remember, we talked about the downrange tracking stations that follow the launcher. Well, right now, these teams are following all the key flight data.
But that is shared,
and
right?
They're reporting the flight
That is
data,
shared between
status of
users.
the launcher back to the teams here in Jupiter. The announcements you hear
That's a
made by the
complete
DDO come
bandwidth, right?
from the CVI.
So,
the information goes to
as
them
one
first,
person, you don't have
and then to
the
the
full
flight desk
terabyte
and to the
per
launch
second.
complex operations manager. All part of the great information flow from points across the base back here to Jupiter. And so you understand Jupiter deserves its name as the nerve center of the space base. Later, these data will be treated to
What happened with Go to Space? I don't know.
The flight
He's
data
inactive
recreated in
for.
figures from liftoff
He's been
to well
inactive
after
for a
satellite
while.
separation and analyzed again. We are coming up in
I'll ask him
Silda
what's up,
separation,
so.
as you see the names of the downrange tracking stations in yellow, the one currently following us. The Silda is that black bell shape, which lets us carry a second passenger, and you will hear the DDO call out that separation.
Séparation du système de lancement double Ariane.
Coming right on time. The same system of springs pushing it away from the mothership, revealing our lower passenger, GSAT-31. Due for separation
Début
in
de la
about
manœuvre d'orientation au profit de
8
GSAT-31.
minutes. GSAT-31, built by ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, of course. We mentioned Ariane 5, known for its double launches. She's the only commercial launcher capable of lifting 2 heavy satellites, and we've done hundreds. And each one requires a Silda or the predecessors of the Silda on previous versions of Ariane. The orbiting GSAT-31, along with GSAT-30, which is an additional geostationary satellite due to be lofted soon by the European launch services provider, Arianespace, marks another vivid demonstration of the strong bond uniting Europe and India in space cooperation. The Indian Space Research Organization has a vision which is to harness space technology for national development while pursuing space science research as well as planetary exploration. ISRO also fosters the use of space to help develop the Indian subcontinent. Our second passenger now, another look at GSAT-31.
And again, I really only get to talk at the ending of the launch.
Please let me introduce GSAT-31, one of the 2 satellites to be launched by Ariane 5, flight VA-247. GSAT-31 is an operational communication satellite designed and manufactured by ISRO, the Indian Space and Research Organization, in order to provide communication services from geostationary orbit for a mission life greater than 15 years. It derives its heritage from ILAS and GSAT-7, which were flown on earlier Ariane 5 launch vehicles. GSAT-31 will be the 23rd ISRO satellite launched by Arianespace, following the launch of GSAT-11 last December, also on Ariane 5. Our cooperation with the Indian Space and Research Organization goes back to 1981, when Ariane Flight L03 launched the Apple spacecraft. It is always with great pleasure that we welcome at CSG our Indian friends.
And our Indian friends, their second passenger due to be separated in about 10 minutes. ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, founded in 1969, having a birthday this year, I believe in August. ISRO's done so much for the nation, so important to India, using space technology for national development, pursuing, as we mentioned, space science research. With GSAT-31, ISRO will again foster the use of space to help bridge the digital divide on the Indian subcontinent. As was mentioned in the film by Alina, Arianespace launched an Apple experimental satellite for India back in 1981 that was on an Ariane 1, making India one of Arianespace's oldest customers. So you can imagine the strong bond linking Arianespace with India. The two have been cooperating nearly 40 years now in their long-term partnership. Since the launch of Apple, Arianespace has orbited 22 satellites, signed 24 launch contracts with the Indian Space Agency, also winning 89% of the geostationary orbit launch contracts open to non-Indian launch systems. More on our Indian satellite. A look at ISRO coming up.
Communication plays a very important role in the overall societal development. In a country like India, which has different geographical topology with many hilly and remote regions, effective communication through satellite becomes inevitable. For more than 3 decades, ISRO has launched and maintained a constellation of communication satellites, providing a variety of operational communication services in the country. GSAT-31 is a communication satellite which will provide continuity of services currently provided by INSAT-4CR and INSAT-4A.
GSAT-31 spacecraft is a high-power communication satellite with payloads in Ku band with an effective isotropic radiated power of 51.5 dBW. This spacecraft is a versatile one with unique configuration of providing flexible frequency segment, and flexible coverage.
The satellite is configured on ISRO's enhanced I-2K bus and weighs around 2,600 kilograms at liftoff. Its power system comprises of deployable solar arrays of 3 panels each with two 135 ampere-hour lithium-ion batteries supporting spacecraft during eclipse conditions. The satellite has 2 large propellant tanks accommodated within the central structure.
I like that. Het is gaaf.
The liquid apogee motor is mounted on a separate deck, which interfaces with the bottom ring of the cylinder.
GSAT-31 satellite with 19 Ku-band transponders will join the fleet of 18 operational communication satellites and further boost the country's in-orbit communication assets. The satellite is designed to operate in Ku-band and will expand VSAT services and other broadcasting requirements.
The payload also has facility for reconfiguration of fixed satellite services by sending commands from ground. 2 Ku-band beacon downlink signals, also generated by the satellite, are transmitted along with the Ku-band transponder signals for ground tracking purpose.
Lots of flexibility has been incorporated in the payload in terms of frequency, coverage, and orbital location. Additionally, a part of the Ku-band spectrum will be used for the first time in Indian satellites. All the subsystems of the payload are having good flight heritage.
ISRO always strives to improve design of its satellites through continuous research and development efforts to progressively enhance their performance. An in-house designed 2.2 by 2 meter deployable single-shell Gregorian reflector is incorporated in GSAT-31 for better coverage and operations.
This spacecraft provides communication services in Indian mainland and island areas such as number 1, connectivity to very small aperture terminals for ATM, stock exchange and e-governance applications. Number 2, telecommunication applications for bulk data transfer for a host of emerging applications. Number 3, emergency communications for disaster management support. It can also be placed at an alternate orbital slot and is capable of providing DTH applications.
GSAT-31 is built to provide seamless communication services for more than 15 years, which will further strengthen ISRO's constellation of communication satellites and will ensure reliable communication services in the country. The satellite is now ready for its space journey and is scheduled to be launched on board Ariane 5 launch vehicle from the European spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana.
Yeah.
Four minutes to go until separation of GSAT-31, so don't anybody go anywhere. We want to mention that there has been a slight loss of telemetry signal today. It's quite normal, not a problem, but it is an interesting process. Sometimes it happens. The ground stations suffer a brief blackout due to the launcher's position. Again, quite normal. It happens usually between stations. Tonight there was a brief loss of signal, 50 seconds, between Intel's loss of the signal and Ascension Island's acquisition of it. And there was another 4-second loss, very tiny one.
I want a t-shirt.
The Gabon station in Libreville, their loss of the signal, and the acquisition by the Malindi station, Gabon, of course, on the east coast, and Malindi on the west coast of Africa. Again, quite normal. We don't lose the information. It's stored in the vehicle. It's stored on board. In the vehicle equipment bay is something called the Central Telemetry Unit, and inside that is something called mass memory. The exact times and duration of the signal loss are programmed in the vehicle equipment bay, and the telemetry unit is programmed to record the data it would normally be sending down to the stations on the ground. Our final film coming up on the relationship between Ariane.
Seriously? Did I reach 100 subs? Somebody tell me if this is right. Oh my god, yes! 100 subs! Woo!
This is based on ISRO's I-2K extended bus.
This satellite will provide a host of communication services in our country in Ku band frequency. The satellite was realized at Bangalore, India in fast-track mode under the guidance of Chairman ISRO and the Director URSC. The realization of this satellite was possible due to immense support given by Team ISRO. GSAT-31 was shipped to the launch pad early January.
Sorry for the ones that were having earphones or
with the Arianespace
sorry.
Smooth, even free operations at the launch pad. The place and the facilities here are similar to our spaceport at Sriharikota. Followed by the launch and successful injection of GSAT-31 by Ariane 5, the solar panels will be deployed and
it has taken over a year, but finally 100. Thank you guys.
In-orbit tests
Thanks.
will be initiated and the satellite will be made available to the users at the earliest.
I wish all the best to GSAT-31 and the teams involved in the launch.
1 minute to go until launch, separation of our lower passenger. We talked about the long and fruitful cooperation between ISRO and Arianespace. ISRO satellites have flown on all versions of the Ariane.
What's the next milestone? 1,000?
French Guiana may be 7,000 kilometers from Paris, but it is very important for Europe. The Guyana Space Center offering an independent access to space, vital for Europe strategically. You see the Jupiter mission controller in two parts. The invited guests and the VIP is on one side of the glass, and the operational people on the other, inside what we call the fishbowl. All these posts there have a backup as well. The Guyana Space Center, Europe's spaceport, certified ISO 14001 in 2004, which means its activities meet the International Environment Standards. We're launching from the CSG, where we have been launching for 50 years. And during those 5 decades, we've launched more than half the telecommunication satellites in operation today. Waiting for confirmation from the DDO on separation of our lower passenger.
Séparation GSAT-31.
Yay, separation.
And there you have that final good news. And you heard the applause from people here in Jupiter, handshakes all around, champagne forthcoming.
There we go.
As Ariane 5 delivers to the smiling faces.
We're not gonna stay around for all those speeches.
Over the Indian Ocean, not far.
Ha! Yeah. I'll just pull up the image of the Ariane 5. So, what I was explaining was actually one thing. Thank you for the 100 subs. No. Kurva, didn't you know that? Okay, I play too many games. Whoa, demonetization. Well, I don't get any money from this anyway, so yeah, what I was explaining was, oh yeah, well, on the CGI image you see you see the boosters. When they separate, the stage goes from this orientation to this, or somewhere around this, and that is because these boosters are giving you a big oomph, and before separation the thrust to weight ratio of the rocket is probably about 2.3 or 4 force. So 4 G's of acceleration, and therefore it already aimed for a apoapsis of 180 kilometers. Then it calculates that it will be hitting that, and then it points down. But then the booster separates, and instead of 4 G's of acceleration, the G's of acceleration fall back with to around 1. So then the stage has to pitch up again to keep the horizontal speed up, and then it falls back to the earth slightly, and then it picks up speed again, and poof, Tak. That's a branch in Dutch, so. What does it mean? What does tak mean? I want to know. But anyway, well, guys, do you still have questions about language? Something Ariane 5 related, or listen to me, I'm desperate. No, I'm not desperate, but if you oh, you guys are chatting about language, and well, I don't really mind, but yeah. There's still any questions on this rocket or anything in general? Otherwise, I will leave the rest of the Ariane 5 to the next Rocket Talk episode, which hopefully will be coming in the next weeks. Oh yeah, that's a good question. Why didn't ISRO launch it? Well, the satellite is too heavy to go on the GSLV. So the GSLV can only take 2 tons to GTO, and I think the GSAT. Well, I still have it here somewhere. But it basically what it is, it's too heavy to go on. So it is 2.5 tons, and I don't know this. I'm really bad. I don't know this from the top of my head. It is 4,000 to GTO, but basically this isn't really operational yet, so they just launch it on a Ariane 5. And I also heard that Arianespace kind of made them launch it on this. They also made them launch it on this. They kind of threatened to not launch any other satellites if they wouldn't launch this on the Ariane 5. So and also its launch availability. But I read somewhere that it also was because they Arianespace basically made them launch this. I don't know how they did that, but they did. And if you're wondering, the GSLV Mark II, it is launched more frequently, but it only can carry 2.7, so it's right at the edge. So that is maybe why it is. Yeah, there are rumors. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, and the GSLV Mark III is at the moment is being. Correct me if I'm wrong, but currently it is going to launch the Indian mission to the moon and land on the moon and put a rover on the moon in April, March, April, somewhere around that. So they wanted to do this. So actually they need a GSLV Mark III for that one, and I don't know how close it is with the mass and actually going to GTO. And also one thing, end of April, the Ariane 5 delivers it into a 6 degree or 3 degree. This was a 3 degree from the top of my head. 3 or 6 degrees inclined orbit, which means that you don't need to change the orbit by a lot. And I think the launching from India, it is around what's the lowest inclination they can get into? Or is it also around this? I need to check on that, but I think it's higher if you launch from India than if you would launch from Kourou, because Kourou is closer to the equator. So yeah, into an 18 degrees. It says it right here. I am blind, but it's 18 versus 6 or 3 degrees. I thought it was 3 degrees now, so that means 15 degrees of less inclination, so you have a little bit more lifetime from your satellite. That's also 90 degrees. Okay, thank you. Yeah, 18, 90 degrees. I thought it was around there. So it also is a so the lowest inclinations you can get into from the Ariane launch site is 3 degrees. Well, actually it's at 6 degrees, but you can do some orbital mechanics and change the trajectory halfway into the flight and then end up in a 3-degree orbit. And if for the GSOV you can't do that, you're too far from the equator. Yeah, what it does, it sort of drifts into orbit, because when you are so imagine you have the map of the Earth and you have the line of the equators going like this, and you launch from Kourou, you go slightly underneath, and then as soon as you cross the equator, you, instead of going prograde, you turn it slightly off the side, so you burn slightly toward the equator again as soon as you cross it, and then you can go into a slightly lower inclination orbit. But it only works from Kourou, because Kourou injects it directly into the target orbit and doesn't need a coast phase. And although the Indians don't use a coast phase, they're just simply too far away from the equator to do the same trick what Arianespace does. Yeah, I do have the SpaceX app, but I don't use it as often as the other launch apps, because the other launch apps have also have the Indian and the other American launches, the other the European launches, the what else do we have? Countries that launch. Chinese launches also, although these are not webcasted, but I do have the app. Yeah, DM1 hopefully coming up. I think the shutdown in 2 weeks now, 1 week. I don't know. It was a temporary measure that the Trump signed, so 3 weeks the shutdown was lifted. But I think the shutdown is gonna screw the DM1 mission again. Oh wow. Lol. Yeah. I think that's it for this. Finally crossed the 100 subs mark. Yeah. I hope you had fun, you enjoyed my stream. I don't know if I'm gonna stream a lot more Arianespace launches. Maybe I'll just leave the Ariane 5 for what it is, because I think it's really annoying that I can't talk in, during the launch, and it is only after the launch I can really talk about what was happening, what happened, what the rocket really does. Maybe if there are bigger coast phases for the Soyuzes and for the Vegas. The Vegas and the Soyuz I will do, but I don't know about Ariane 5. It keeps getting back to me that I can't talk when it's launching. It's really annoying. It's been your best yet? I don't think so. I can improve at the beginning. I should script something. So yeah, I think this is it. And for again, stay tuned on my channel for the actual next Rocket Talk. I hope to release it before the next launch, because the next launch is at the beginning of March, I think. Yeah, there are 2 Falcons still towards the end, but I don't think they're gonna end up happening because shutdown. But we'll see. I will let you know for the Falcons. I don't know what time they're actually scheduled, so maybe I'm able to host them. And the next launch from Arianespace is going to be a Soyuz, which is launching. I think it was the Orbcom. No, what was it? OneWeb satellites to a high orbit around the equator. Which launch vehicle this time on Rocket Talk? It's going to be the Ariane 5. But the Soyuz, the time I saw was around the same time I started this stream, so I again am able to host it. It's again going to be on a Tuesday. So good night, and yeah, see you all in the next one at Astra.